situation. He took a pitch in the back. He got beamed for crying out loud.
Who used heart attack? Me.
Managers on a Major League Baseball team don't make decisions.
Could have done without that.
Credibility in this situation is worse than losing your job.
Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor?
The castration of the Major League Baseball managers. We know it.
Ask me about my winner.
I was trying to think about the number of different ways I could go when it comes to the Kyrie Irving situation and him ending up with the Dallas Mavericks. But I don't want to hit up on things that are so repetitive. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about talking about sports is when I get into a topic and I wonder exactly where it is that I'm going to go with it. Because right now, I really don't know. I could state the obvious. I could state the fact that Kyrie Irving has made the NBA and his career and his life about him and has certainly not been a good teammate. I don't think he was a good teammate in Cleveland. To ask for a trade, to ask to leave the great LeBron James when he was winning championships, and obviously there was chemistry there. Gets traded to Boston, which wasn't his fault. Was never a fit for him either. Makes the decision that he's taken over Brooklyn with Kevin Durant. And one thing that I did learn in the last couple of seconds that I'm not going to do is I'm not going to criticize the Brooklyn Nets. They could be knocked for making a bad decision. They could be knocked for having this crazy dream that Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were going to take over New York and be the greatest pairing in NBA history. We're going to be the next Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And you could say they were wrong for that. But that's as far as I'm going to go with it. Because you put Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the court, and ultimately it is up to them. They shoot Kenny Atkinson out of there. They got rid of Steve Nash, who, by the way, it's his birthday today. Hall of Fame point guard, one of the better facilitators in the history of the sport. So I'm not knocking the Nets for their decision because it's not on the same level as Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. You know, you took a chance on two older players with the thought that, hey, you're going from New Jersey to Brooklyn. You're trying to make it about the Brooklyn Nets and their identity and their brand. And you chose two players that were great players. Maybe not all-time great players. Durant goes back in history as probably a better and more dominant player than Paul Pierce, but they were both very good in their own right. They both belong in the Hall of Fame, but they were both well past their prime. You're asking two players right in the middle of their career. Kevin Durant, who had won 2 NBA championships with the Golden State Warriors, and Kyrie, of course, who had won in Cleveland with LeBron, to team up and take over the NBA. And they were set up to do that. Kevin Durant, from his end, has done everything he possibly could. The only issue with Kevin Durant is he hasn't been able to stay on the court. He's getting hurt every year. It's part of getting older, but injuries are something that are unfortunate. Kevin Durant can't go out there and do the things that he was expected to do because he's not on the court. Kyrie Irving, all the reasons that he hasn't been on the court, has brought the Nets and their franchise down. And this is 100% on Kyrie Irving. And not that he didn't have the right to ask for a trade. He was working on a negotiation for a contract extension. His antics, whether it's the anti-Semitism or the decision to not get vaccinated, or just the weirdness when it came to the setting with COVID and his decision to go out there without masks when risk that he could get sick. All these different things that Kyrie Irving did to make things about himself are all reasons why the Brooklyn Nets should not have and didn't give him the contract extension or that max extension that he was looking for. So he's got the right, if he's not going to get that, to request a trade, and the Nets did what they had to do by sending him to the Dallas Mavericks. Now there's two ends of that. There's where the Nets end up. Do they end up trading Kevin Durant as well? And I don't think they have to. I mean, I think from a media standpoint, from a reporting standpoint, giving you something to talk about and bullshit about standpoint, where's Kevin Durant going to go? Is he going to be dealt before this trading deadline? It's a talking point. But I expect to see him remain with the Nets And the question is, the Nets, one of the things that I don't believe has been spoken about enough, the Nets in a good position in the Eastern Conference, 4th seed, obviously lose their best player that's on the court because Kevin Durant's out with an injury. You replace him with Spencer Dinwiddie, you replace him with Dorian Finney-Smith, maybe a little bit from Cam Thomas. He gets a little more of a chance to score and shoot. He's had a couple 40-point games for them. The question is, the Nets, are they good enough to make any damage or convince anybody that they're a serious team in the playoffs? But what I think it does create that I find fascinating, and this is assuming that Kevin Durant ends up staying, is the ability of Kevin Durant as a star player and to finally see it on display. You saw it with Russell Westbrook and James Harden years ago from when he was drafted and, of course, ended up playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder. You saw it on display when he was a secondary or tertiary player behind Steph Curry, with Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. He was expected to team up with Kyrie Irving. And what I could see happening is this is actually a great opportunity for Kevin Durant, once he's healthy, to see how he could lead a team. He's got scores there. Cam Thomas is willing to shoot the ball and score 40 a game if he needs to. Spencer Dinwiddie, first of all, has played in Brooklyn before, and he's been a prolific scorer in his career, starting with the Nets and, of course, with Washington and then Dallas. And you look at some of the other players there, and perhaps it's an opportunity for Kevin Durant as a singular basketball player, not an individual, but as a singular leading basketball player to lead that franchise going forward. And I think this should be considered a good day in the history of the Brooklyn Nets franchise. Perhaps you look at the book being closed of what didn't work out, and Kyrie Irving and all that he has caused by almost single-handedly trying to bring an organization down just by himself. I think this is the dawn of a new era and an opportunity if the Nets decide and Kevin Durant decides that he wants to go forward with the partnership like he declared at the beginning of the season. How about let's see what this Nets team could do with Kyrie? Because I think from a mental standpoint, from a distraction standpoint, from an aggravation standpoint, the Nets are in a better position right now than they were, even with Kyrie averaging 27 a game for them. Now the question is going to be with the Mavericks. How much better are the Mavericks? Jalen Brunson left as a free agent, and I thought that was a big loss for Dallas. They were not able to replace him. Obviously, if you're looking at Kyrie Irving and his talent, he's a much better player than Jalen Brunson. I think very few people are going to deny that. But Luka is the alpha dog there. He is the guy that is going to facilitate and ask for the ball. Kyrie Irving is considered one of the best ball handlers and one of the more central ball controllers in the history of the National Basketball Association. So you wonder how the two of them are going to exist. First of all, who's bringing the ball up? Who's facilitating the offense? Obviously, you have two big-time scorers that could go off at any time. To me, this makes Dallas a very top-heavy team, a team that you want to make sure that you're not having a situation where the two star players are kind of getting in each other's way and counteracting the strengths and abilities that they have. Now, you're going to say, hey, that's up to Jason Kidd. Well, listen, Jason Kidd's going to, and mark my word here, we could point back to this moment on the show that I recorded on the 7th of February, 2023. Kyrie Irving will lead to Jason Kidd getting fired, especially if he signs an extension to remain in Dallas. So Jason Kidd, his career as the Dallas Mavericks head coach is going to come to an end. It could come to an end this year, even if Kyrie doesn't come back. The question, you wonder, from one of the greatest point guards in NBA history and really one of the best basketball acumens and minds in the history of the sport. No, the thing is, nobody's going to figure out Kyrie Irving. Nobody is going to be able to manage Kyrie Irving because Kyrie Irving has made the decision a long time ago that he's going to do and say whatever the hell he wants, whenever the hell he wants to. And it's gotten in the path of what could have been a very good championship career for Kyrie Irving. He could have won multiple championships with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He could have been part of a winning core with the Boston Celtics. And he certainly could have teamed up with Kevin Durant, helped the Brooklyn Nets bring a championship to that city. He was the reason that James Harden asked for out. He was really the reason that I'm sure Kevin Durant is questioning whether he made a good decision to team up with Kyrie Irving and go to Brooklyn. What you're going to see in Dallas, I don't know. Because I asked myself where Dallas was before this trade and where they are right now. And I thought, led by Luka, I thought they could make a run in the playoffs. They did last year where they really, they made it to the conference finals against Golden State. I have a lot of belief in a Luka-led team. The question's going to be, Kyrie Irving, in spite of all his talents and abilities, is he going to get in a way of Dallas? And I think that's a 50-50 shot. I think there's a 50-50 chance that he helps them and they get a little better, and maybe they make a push to make it to the NBA Finals, because I do think the West is wide open, even though Denver's very good, even though Memphis is very good, even though there's a lot of teams in that conference that I think can make a little noise in the postseason, not to mention Golden State, who, they deserve their honeymoon after winning the NBA championship. They'll probably get themselves ready for the postseason. Can Dallas take a shot here? Yes, they absolutely can. But the question is going to be, is Kyrie Irving going to help Dallas more or get in their way more? So today is the 7th day of February 2023, and I'm going to get into a little bit of this day in sports history. In 1882, John L. Sullivan was the last bare-knuckle boxing champion. He ended up knocking out Paddy Ryan, and it's significant as John L. Sullivan, probably one of the less spoken about all-time fighters. I put him up there with Jack Dempsey. I put him up there with Rocky Marciano. And it's hard, when you're talking about 1882 to 1940 something to, Lennox Lewis in 1994 to anybody else you want to put up against. But John L. Sullivan was a beast. And obviously you're talking about boxing being totally different then. You didn't even have gloves on. You're risking your life when you go in a ring. There's a certain percentage of fighters that went in there to fight that didn't come out of it alive. And some of them were basically disfigured for the rest of their lives. John L. Sullivan, one of the more dominant boxing champions in the history of the sport. 1949, Joe DiMaggio became the first MLB player to sign a one-year contract for $100,000. And obviously, 1949, a big deal. We're talking about post-World War II. Salaries throughout the country are starting to go up progressively, but not anywhere near as much as they would go through in the 60s, 70s, and of course the 90s, 2000s, and where they are today. But it was a significant moment. Joe DiMaggio at that point is probably making more than the President of the United States at $100,000 a year. And to quote the great Babe Ruth, Joe D. May said, "I had a better year than he had." 2010, Super Bowl 44. The Saints beat the Indianapolis Colts 31-17. The one thing that stands out for me is the onside kick by Sean Payton to start the second half. A close game, and I think the onside kick, totally kept the Colts off guard. Peyton Manning's first Super Bowl, a big deal there as Sean Payton wins his first and only with Drew Brees. Super Bowl 6 years later, Denver with Peyton Manning ends up beating Carolina 24-10. That's Cam Newton's MVP year. He was great. He was the best quarterback in the NFL that year. Big moment. I think listen, 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, you have a lot of chance to hear from people. So I don't know how prepared or ready Carolina was for that Denver defense. I'm not sure they realized how good that Denver defense was, but it was on full display. Peyton Manning ends up going out with a Super Bowl victory, but a game that if it wasn't for the Denver defense, Carolina probably wins. 5 years later, talking about another legend, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 31-9 over the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl, was it 55? Tom Brady on display again, his last Super Bowl victory. Of course, announcing his retirement this past week or so. Looks like he's done. He's got a contract with Fox. It looks like he's convinced that he's moving on now, but obviously stands out. His last Super Bowl victory came with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2 years ago today. So some birthdays. Former Dodgers right-hand pitcher Bert Hooton. He threw a no-hitter. He was the NLCS MVP in 1981 for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Benny Ayala, former PBS guest, hit a home run in his first at-bat in the major leagues for the New York Mets. Had a pretty good career, most notably for the Baltimore Orioles in the late 70s. Dan Quisenberry, was born on this day in 1953. I've made my case. I believe this guy is a Baseball Hall of Famer. You know my take. Get the immortals in first, Bonds and Clemens and Rose and Joe Jackson, the players who accomplished the best stats. Rafael Palmeiro, Sammy Sosa. Get those guys in first. Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez. They belong in the Hall of Fame first. But once you square that away, Dan Quisenberry belongs in. He was as dominant as Bruce Sutter in the 1980s. Bruce Sutter was a great pitcher. I think very few people dispute Sutter's accomplishments and notoriety and deservedness to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. But it's hard to look at the careers of Bruce Sutter and Dan Quisenberry and say that they didn't mirror each other. And I don't really like saying, hey, one player's in the Hall of Fame, so the other should be in. But for a player to dominate the sport and really be the quintessential closer in an entire league, in the American League, it's hard to look at Dan Quisenberry and not recognize his dominance. And I believe there's a place. You look at Trevor Hoffman and Mariano Rivera and eventually Billy Wagner. And you think of course, Raleigh Fingers and Sutter and Goose Gossage. It's hard to look at Quisenberry and say that he doesn't belong in that group. Bucky Richardson, former Houston Oilers quarterback. I always laugh because, the season that after Warren Moon was traded, it was an opportunity for Cody Carlson, who got hurt, and a number 7 Bucky Richardson. I remember him in 1993 trying to quarterback that Houston Oilers offense. He was born in 1969. Chris Gardocki, the punter for the Indianapolis Colts, was born on this day in 1970. And I think of Chris Gardocki, and all I think of is, you don't want to walk down the street when Chris Gardocki is hanging out in the park with his friends. He's going to friggin' kick your ass. 1974, Steve Nash. We spoke about it before. His birthday today. 1978, happy birthday, Endy Chavez. He'll always be remembered for that incredible catch in Game 7 of the 2006 NLCS. Matthew Stafford, a Super Bowl winning quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams, last year's Super Bowl winner. And a couple of people that passed away on this day. Major League Baseball legends. Napoleon Lajoie died on this day in 1959. And another legend, one of the greatest offensive position players in the history of baseball, Frank Robinson, passed away on this day just 4 years ago. This is the Pass Ball Show, brought to you by JohnPielli.com, by St. Aloysius Church in Jackson, New Jersey, by 2A's One Passion Food Truck located in Scranton, Pennsylvania. You can check the show out, whether it's YouTube on video. You can check out my podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, anywhere you get your podcast. Just look me up, John Pielli, last name Pielli. God bless you, and as always, I'll see you on the other side. Chris Bryant was on the Chicago Cubs roster opening day.
I have many leather-bound books. My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Why don't you give it all, or a majority of it, to the team that wins the friggin' World Series?
I was going to listen to that, but then I just carried on living my life.
And they've come out as the biggest
Major League Baseball manager apologist.
It'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
Because hitters are going out there saying, I'm either going to hit a home run or I'm going to strike out. And if I don't get a pitch that I feel like I could drive out of the park,
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
especially prospect whores and hoarders, are going to be a little pissed off at me when I say this.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
There are only two managers in baseball's Hall of Fame who have losing records. One of them is the iconic Nash, who you could say, in spite of winning 5 World Series championships as a manager, could be in as much as a pioneer. And what side of the spectrum they're on. Were they pitching? Were they batting? If your favorite team was pitching and a ball got inside and hit a batter, there's no way it could have been on purpose. But if you were a fan of the team that was batting and the ball got inside and hit somebody or went behind somebody's head, absolutely 100% unequivocally that pitcher was throwing at him. They put their tail between their legs and decided they're going to do exactly what they're told. You damn well right better give him a contract extension. You damn well right better make him the manager over the next series of years.
35 years ago, I could have loaned your parents the money for an abortion.